Because of our socialization and our biological drives, it can seem really normal to try to look for another person or persons to take away your loneliness. It seems like that is the status quo. You are lonely, let's say, and so how do you handle that? You look for someone else or multiple someone else's to take away that feeling. But if you're on a path of personal and or spiritual growth, this can actually be an ineffective way of going about dealing with your loneliness. This desire to be with another, one of the biological reasons for this is because up until now, the life of humanity has largely been about death. It's been about just surviving and just looking to create offspring so that part of your DNA will live on, and that is supposed to be the purpose of your existence, like any other life form. Simply replicate yourself. But we're entering an era in which more and more people are trying to get in touch with their true eternal nature and their individual wholeness. And they're trying to live on through being alive and being here and staying healthy as long as there's purpose to being here. And this is a very different approach than the breed and die approach. And many people are still, going to be in the survival mode. But if you look at what the planet as a whole needs, it's really not more people. Overpopulation is a core problem for most of the biggest challenges that the planet faces in terms of starvation and global warming, climate change, if you will, and basically a depletion of resources that are systemically creating more and more stress upon the planet. So because of this, Gaia, or the consciousness that is interconnected to this planet, Earth, shifts our consciousnesses as well. And so it's not just about shifting from breed and die because that's individually rewarding. It's also rewarding on a planetary level. It's better for all if we focus on our individual healing. And of course, many people are still going to have offspring and they have the drive to do so, and there's not much you can do to change that. But whether you have that desire or not, it's not about your core purpose anymore of just creating more life and further populating the planet. People are living longer and longer, and so therefore more and more people being created on the planet is just going to add to overpopulation problems. So if you are looking to become whole through marriage and having children, you might be in for a surprise. You might find that doesn't work for you. You might try it repeatedly, and get married over and over, and you keep looking for that sense of wholeness. But there is a shift that's going on that is not about the form in which your life takes, so much as how do you feel about yourself. And it's rather shocking that so few people really feel okay on their own, in their own skin, by themselves. And whether you are in a relationship or not, you can still spend more time alone as a practice of getting to know yourself, of getting to understand what do you like, what are you here to do. And as you spend time alone, you'll also find in silence, you can receive more guidance about what you're here to do, what your purpose is, and what you need to be focused upon. You can also get in touch with where are the hurts that still need to be resolved, what comes up for you. And when you don't try to escape from what comes up for you emotionally, you can be present with it and understand it and go through the grief process as well. And I really have a strong vision that the era in which we live, and the long era of humanity for hundreds of years, has been so focused on codependent behavior, it'll be seen in the future as highly dysfunctional. And I do strongly believe in this vision of more people in the future having a sense of wholeness. There's a lot of fear being propagated on the planet right now through news, through the media, that people become addicted to this fear. They feel like the earth is ending, and when people are afraid, they cling even more. They feel that relationships are the only way to feel a sense of completeness and wholeness. And if you have an underlying sense of impending death, then that also feeds into the desire to, procreate and live on through your children. But it's all really misguided and misdirected energy. What is really dying at this time is not the planet, but the grip of ego that has persisted for so long. And as our ego slips away, it becomes very clingy, desperate, and sneaky. And so anything you can do to stay in power will come to the surface in your mind. But you have to recognize it. You have to recognize ego so you don't fall into its traps and games. And so when you feel loneliness and you feel like, oh, I will die, or my life has no purpose because I'm so alone and so lonely and so disconnected, well, that's not true. None of that is true. It just is a sign that ego wants to stay in control. But there's nothing more powerful than a person who moves through that kind of fear and clingy and codependent kind of thinking to reach the point where they do the healing that leads to individual wholeness. And you might think, well, if I just focus on my individual wholeness, then I won't have relationships, and what an underutilization of life that would be. And that's not true. For the first time, you can actually have real relationships when you feel whole and you've spent enough time alone and you've spent enough energy working on healing yourself, because your relationships, when you reach that point, are not going to be from a place of neediness. They're going to be from a place of expanding on the wholeness that is already there and being able to enjoy others without desperation, without needing to start to control them because you fear that this supposed wholeness that you've found in this relationship is now a vital part of your existence. And so anything that you can do to hold on to it and to control it will sustain happiness, when in reality it's the control and the fear of loss that ruins relationships. It ruins one's individual peace as well. So even if you feel that this impulse when you're alone to take away your pain through relationship is normal, and it seems normal because everyone else is doing it, or so it seems, know that the best way to deal with discomfort when it arises is to just feel it, be present with it, listen to it, learn from it, and understand yourself better through the process. And know that nobody is here to be whole through a relationship. Whether you're in a relationship or not, you can work on yourself. If you're in a relationship, spend more time alone. If you don't feel comfortable being alone, that's a sign. Create space for yourself within a relationship. This also makes relationships more interesting when people are developing as individuals. Then when they are together, they have more to bring to the relationship, and it keeps things more interesting and stimulating. You don't have to just rely upon activities and media to keep things stimulating. You remain stimulating to each other when you are whole and when you are free and developing and evolving eternally. It's an ongoing process. As long as we're here, we're growing, we're evolving. And I think that the underlying sense of fear leads to feeling I'm going to die soon, or what if I die alone, and all these kind of ego thoughts that make people desperate for relationships to try to bring the feeling of escape, basically, from oneself. And our uncomfortable feelings cannot be resolved through escape. We might get a high for a while through others, but the stuff that's there is going to come out eventually. It's going to come up again, and it's going to get projected on your partners. And so it needs to be dealt with. And sometimes the universe intervenes, I believe, in which, by which I mean, if we feel that our only way of getting to a place of okayness is through relationships, then we might find it very difficult to find relationships that are available. Things don't work out for one reason or another. It's because the universe says at some point, enough. I'm not going to enable your codependence anymore. I'm not going to enable your addiction. And codependence and addiction might be seen as things that only appeal to a small number of people with, extreme issues in those areas. But I think it's a more widespread kind of thing. We've seen so many movies that are about the completion through the coming together at the point of finding someone and being in a relationship or getting married or whatever. But very rarely do they go beyond that and show that whatever you came into that relationship with is going to come up again sooner or later. It is not going to go away. If you feel a discomfort in your body, that's not a sign that somebody needs to come along and fix that for you. It's a sign that you have work to do as an individual to find your hurts from the past and issues with family of origin and unfinished business with people in your life, and deal with things directly, and improve your self-esteem and find what you're here to do as an individual. All of these things are very healthy and very proactive ways to approach your healing. And when you get to that place, all of your relationships, whether they're romantic relationships or platonic relationships, will improve because you can see people clearly for the first time. You cannot see another person with any degree of clarity if you are looking at them as a source of your completion, something you need, another object that will give you fulfillment. I mean, this is very common, that this is how people perceive each other, and in that process, they no longer are actually seeing the other person at all. They're just seeing their own needs projected onto the person and what that person can do for them. And it's all very unhealthy and very sick. So those are my thoughts related to this topic, and thanks for listening.